the Amnesia franchise feels like it's been around forever, doesn't it? In reality, it's only been 13 years since the first game's release, and I appreciate that for a teenager 13 years sounds like a really long time, and I'm clearly unbelievably old, but relative to the lifespan of gaming, it's really not all that long ago. We were still on the PS3 at the time, I guess. Maybe it was a while ago. Either way, Amnesia is responsible for the rise of Let's Play content on YouTube and continues to be a series whose relevance and influence has never really dissipated. Frictional games, purveyors of games often obsessed with the nature of humanity and the oppressive weight of the dark corners of the earth, have accomplished rather a lot for a fairly young company. Their games might not sell as well as Resident Evil, but their impact on horror gaming, from the claustrophobic level design to the first-person creeping through tight hallways and dilapidated rooms, limited resources and minimalist approach to monster design, visibility and combat mechanics, made them an absolute standout for a good reason. Over the years, their ethos has changed a little here and there. The more linear Soma and Amnesia Rebirth focusing much more on their story means that, in my opinion, both of these games are the best that Frictional have to offer. But in general, their core mechanics have remained largely the same, and that's still the case with their latest offering, Amnesia the Bunker. In Bunker, you play Henri, a French soldier navigating the front lines of war whose life is flip-turned upside down when he's downed by artillery fire whilst trying to rescue a friend. Awakening in a cold, dark underground shelter, Henri must navigate the warrens of the bunker in search of an escape, all the while avoiding the roaming monstrosity that has torn apart the survivors who saved his life. It's a simple premise, and unfortunately it never gets particularly more interesting than that. The story is overwhelmingly told through notes collected from lockers, corpses, and scattered about the environment. Whilst on the surface this doesn't seem too dissimilar to prior games, all of which made liberal use of documents to flavour the story, Bunker is almost entirely told through collectible, missable notes outside of its opening 10 minutes. There is a scripted story sequence at the very beginning to introduce you to the mechanics of the game, a sequence that does work extremely well at establishing exactly what you'll be doing, but once the bunker opens up, the only other cutscene you'll be seeing will be right before the credits roll. There is one conversation to be had before the last survivor is unceremoniously yoinked through a wall, and after that, Henri is free to dilly-dally about without worrying that he might be interrupted by an ill-timed chat. I mean, there is a German prisoner shrieking about the French devil in one of those prison cells, but, you can guess what happens to him, can't you?
Ein Teufel, die französischen Teufel.
All told, the story is the weakest aspect of Bunker, and though it absolutely works well for the style of game that Frictional have produced this time around, it doesn't sit well with me in particular. Rebirth is my favourite of the Amnesia games precisely because of its laser focus on strong, complex characters with difficult histories and interpersonal strife, wrapped around a beautifully rotten sandwich of body horror and insanity. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't expecting them to just make the same game again because that's hardly conducive to an interesting experience, but it is a bit of a shame that Bunker is so light on story developments, although it does at least tie into prior entries in a way that made me grin like an idiot at my screen. Let's dismiss the story complaints for now though, since to be fair the plot isn't really the focal point of the game. That much is obvious from the moment you awaken in the bunker proper. This time around, Amnesia is far more focused on its atmosphere, resource and inventory management, and the appropriate muffling of your own noisy self as you move from room to room. Keeping quiet is your biggest concern traversing the bunker, with everything from your footsteps to your little wind-up torch attracting attention, especially if you start charging it as the monster's creeping around the nearby tunnels. Beyond this, the bunker is riddled with traps left behind by your predecessors, forcing you to watch your footing and take your time to avoid triggering an explosion that at best will draw the beast to you, and at worst will outright kill you, sending you right back to the last time you manually saved. Bunker has no checkpoints. Instead, saving is done manually via an oil lamp in the main hub, where you will periodically need to return to drop off or pick up items, check your map and objectives, and crucially refuel the generator. Around 10 minutes into Bunker, you will be brought to the administration office where you must engage the generator to switch on the lights, and you are quickly informed that maintaining the generator should be a number one priority. In the dark, the monster is far more active, but it's not just that. Certain areas can only be accessed if the electricity is on. As a result, the core gameplay loop revolves around carefully balancing speed, stealth, and time as you explore each area for the items you need to progress. If the generator runs out of fuel, you'll be plunged into darkness, and it won't be long before the creature emerges from its rabbit warrens to hunt you down. The first time this happened to me, I cowered in a corner and listened to the splendid atmospherics of the beast shuffling from room to room, sniffing the air, smashing through doors. In that regard, the game's sound design is spectacular. The directional audio is on point and makes navigating the darkness a true and rewarding challenge should you find yourself lost in it as you gauge your distance and location, comparative to your stalker, and make liberal use of tables, closets, and dark, dingy corners in an effort to sneak back to the generator without being grabbed. Initially I was frustrated by the fact that there's only one save point in the main bunker. There is another much later on, but this is only used for the deeper excavation tunnels to prevent you from having to walk for 5 minutes should you fall victim to the dangers in there instead. However, as time went on and I began to find faster and more efficient ways of traversing the environment to grab everything I needed, I came to appreciate it. It's absolutely frustrating the first time it happens, spending 10 minutes sneaking around, gathering tools and fuel, only to have the monster pop out of the darkness and immediately murder you, sending you right back to your last save, was profoundly infuriating the first time it happened. But it does engender careful exploration for your first runs, following which you begin to map out the layout of the bunker in your head, identifying the best routes, safest, the smartest, and the most dangerous but worthwhile paths to take around the monster. Since so much hinges on the amount of noise you make, you need to carefully consider the route you'll be taking, how you'll take it, and whether or not you can make the sprint back to the safe room before your knees are nibbled. Assisting in your exploration are a reasonable variety of tools, items that can be combined to solve problems with more explosive aplomb, and the tried and trusted method of dragging boxes around to climb over things or block holes. The game's loading screen suggests that if you can think of a way around a problem, it will probably work, but in total honesty, I never really found it necessary to think outside the box all that much, given that the most effective way to open a blocked door if you can't find a brick to hurl at it is to just blow it the fuck up. Whilst this does attract the monster, it's generally quite easy to tuck yourself out of the way until it buggers off again. The monster does tend to patrol the area that you're in, but unlike Outlast or Alien Isolation where the enemies wander about in the open and always seem to know where you are no matter how illogical it is, it works far better in Bunker given that the deathly silence of this empty place you're in allows every creak of a door and every footstep to resonate. The creature will clamber about in tunnels when the lights are on, emerging briefly to investigate disturbances before returning to scrambling about out of sight. Due to this in your first playthrough at the very least, this does allow the monster to maintain an air of mystery and uncertainty. It's not in your face, it's not constantly chasing you, and most of the time when you do attract it with a loud noise, you'll be hiding out of the way enough that you can barely, if ever, see the thing ambling around. It's swift despite its bulk, and if it catches you, you are dead. Balancing the noise, the timing of your fuel consumption, and ensuring that you find everything you need is the game's strongest aspect, and even in repeat playthroughs where you know what you need to do and what you're looking for, that feeling of high-octane tension never really goes away. In my second run, I abandoned any real sense of stealth unless I needed to actively hide, and as a result the monster would emerge from his warrens far more often, brought forth by my stomping boots, and would often be trooping around a corner as I left a room I'd just cased, throwing me into a panic in a desperate search for the nearest table to jump under. It really cannot be stressed enough how much the central focus of Bunker is around inventory management and ensuring that you learn the layout of your surroundings to more efficiently complete your objectives. Like Resident Evil before it, you're encouraged to learn your way around without having to constantly run back to the safe room to check, and whilst it does work very well, the actual map isn't all that big, so figuring it out takes minimal effort. That's not to say that's a bad thing. It would be far worse if it was a much larger map, and as it stands at the moment, Bunker's layout is essentially perfect. There is a central hub in which your admin office sits, as well as the lockers that you'll be running back to unlock and get the next progression item, followed by 4 other areas that require various tools to fully explore. Once you've opened up all the doors by lifting the lockdown, you're free to explore these areas in any order you wish, although many of the rooms require you to find at least one progression item, such as the bolt cutters, in order to continue. However, you will be able to run back and forth to hoard fuel if you so desire, but be warned, storage space in the admin office box is limited, so you're encouraged instead to remember where everything is. Although, if you really want to, you can just throw stuff on the ground and come back to it later as long as you remember where it is. This time around, Amnesia does provide a way of fighting back against the monster. Your trusty revolver can throw the beast off its game for the few seconds you need to flee, though ammo is limited, and you may find that you need to carefully consider whether you use a bullet to shoot a lock or save it for that moment when you walk around a corner and the monster is in your face. As long as you make expedient use of distraction items and hiding spots, you'll find yourself drowning in bullets by the end of the game when you need them the most. You can use grenades to temporarily scare away the rats that run around the tunnels and eat corpses, or use a Molotov to burn away the bodies that are attracting them, which will prevent them from coming back. Flares will light up areas or set fire to fuel spills, but the noise will draw attention. Some items seem a little unnecessary. I never bothered with gas grenades, for example, but there are plenty of methods available to deal with the rats whilst you confront the bigger problem of the creature walking down the stairs towards your hidey hole. There is also a shotgun in the game, but at the risk of spoiling one of the most interesting parts of Bunker, I won't discuss that here. Bunker's visual fidelity and performance absolutely elevates its relatively simple gameplay loop, and combined with the sound design, this allows it to flourish into a not necessarily unique, but nonetheless impressive, calculating and enjoyable outing. The game ran beautifully on both my laptop and on the Steam Deck, with the caveat that there is an odd visual bug on the deck that causes Henri's hands to flicker every so often, but this was the only issue I came across over multiple runs. Its tight, winding pathways, long shadows, and the dreary background tones that ramp up in intensity as your monstrous friend grows ever closer, all combine to provide a compelling experience that drowns you in desperate claustrophobia. Environmental detail is fantastic, and the manner in which you explore it allows the path of destruction your predecessors took to try to combat the monstrosity to weigh heavily on your shoulders. Still, it's a shame that there isn't more to Bunker. Once you complete the game, it politely informs you that no two runs are the same, and you should definitely delve into it one more time to see what's changed. In truth, very little changes. The layout of the bunker is, as best I can tell, always the same, unless I got very unlucky with RNG, with the only changes being the location and frequency of consumable items and the location and value of the codes needed to open the lockers. Otherwise, the game is the same each time, and that is a real shame. I would have loved to have seen the map shift around, perhaps with 4 or 5 variations of the overall map pattern, with changes to the corridors and rooms within each of those sectors. The game is still fun to replay, if only to see how fast you can bull rush through, with there being an achievement for completing the game faster than the frictional devs, which is believed at this time to be below half an hour. But the lack of any real changes to the overall structure of the game is a huge detriment to future runs, for though the codes do change to prevent you from completely memorising everything, once you understand the mechanics of the monster and know where all the hiding spots are, you can breeze through a repeat playthrough without issue. As a result of this, the impact of the beast and the game's stellar atmosphere massively lessens, with the creature becoming a minor annoyance more than a hindrance. Whilst I still prefer Rebirth, primarily due to its body horror aspects and its story, Bunker is a solid entry into a franchise that still makes waves for the innovation it gave us all those years ago. I would love to see what the team can do if they can combine the open-ended exploration of Bunker with the strong storytelling of Soma and Rebirth, but for now, I can happily recommend this as a fun, tense crawl through the shadows. The impact of its excellent design is certainly lessened with successive playthroughs, but in that first run, when the lights go out and something begins to crawl through the darkness, there's nothing more befitting of the Amnesia name and legacy. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the like button, it really helps me out, and maybe subscribing if you want to see more in the future, I'd really appreciate it. Let me know what you thought of Bunker and the other Amnesia and fictional games below. I'm really curious to see which one is your favourite. Thanks for watching.